writing, a way to communicate without the need of a one-on-one conversation. It is a system of visual marks that represent units of a particular language. Writing has been invented independently of each other in the Near East, China, and Mesoamerica. We have the cuneiform script that was created in Mesopotamia, known as modern-day Iraq, in 3200 BC. It was the first. In fact, it is the only writing system that can be traced back to its initial prehistoric origin. The three writing systems that were created independently in the Near East, China, and Mesoamerica all shared amazing stability, as each system kept characteristics of their original prototypes. The Mesopotamian cuneiform script can be traced back into prehistory to a 10,000-year-old counting system that used a variety of clay tokens. The change from clay tokens to script shows that writing came from counting and accounting. Up until the 3rd millennium BC, writing was only used for accounting, but once the Sumerians were troubled by religious matters, such as the idea of the afterlife, it paved the way to advanced literature by writing for funerary inscriptions. The development from a token-based system to script also shows that the advancement in extracting data from one-on-one conversation to using real three-dimensional tokens to two-dimensional pictures, the creation of abstract numbers, phonetic syllabic signs, and lastly, in the 2nd millennium BC, the concept of sound and meaning using the depiction of phonemes by the letters of the alphabet. The early known Chinese writings dated to the Shang dynasty from 1400 to 1200 BC. They were made up of prophecy texts that were etched on turtle shells and animal bones. The Chinese writings were very abstract, and the text signs suggested that there had to be previous prototypes to get to that point in its development, but sadly there is no evidence of these original writings. In Mesoamerica, it is still unclear how symbols and glyphs used by the Olmec civilization along the Gulf of Mexico from 600 to 500 BC resurfaced in the old Maya art and writing from 250 to 900 AD in other Mesoamerican cultures. That is why the Mesopotamian cuneiform script, invented by the Sumerians at around 3200 BC, is the most important system of the three when looking for the origins of writing, as it can be traced back to around 10,000 years from a prehistory system all the way up to a modern-day alphabet. Knowing all that, writing in Mesopotamia will be the center focus. There are 4 phases when it comes to the development of writing. First is the token-based system to represent units of supplies. Were used for accounting. This is from 8000 to 3500 BC. Second is the three-dimensional tokens were changed into two-dimensional pictographic signs. And just like the previous token system, the pictographs were used only for accounting. This is from 3500 to 3000 BC. Third are phonetic signs. They were used to record the names of individuals. This is when writing hit its breakthrough, as this is the time when writing started catching up to spoken language. This resulted in writing being applied to all areas of human activities. This is from 3000 to 1500 BC. Lastly is the 4th phase. This is when writing used 20 or so letters, each one representing a sound of the tongue. The alphabet came to life, and with it, completed the execution of speech. Let's dive deeper, starting with the token system as the ancestor of writing. The clay tokens that ranged in numerous shapes was a recording system, a prehistoric prototype of the ancient Mesopotamian script. The token artifacts were geometric forms, such as spheres, cones, discs, ovoids, and cylinders. These artifacts were found in archaeological sites that dated from 8000 to 3000 BC, shown here. The tokens were used as counters to keep up to date with merchandise. This can be seen as a prehistoric code, an organized structure of symbols that transferred information without the need of speech. Every one of these tokens was semantic. For those that don't know what semantic means, it is defined as of or relating to meaning in language. Each of the tokens referred to a specific unit of goods. For example, the cone, sphere, and flat disc tokens are measurements of cereals, from small, bigger, and largest. Ovoid-shaped tokens symbolize jars of oil. The tokens are varied, that 300 types of tokens made it possible to store information on many types of things. The interesting thing is that the token system had very little in common with regard to spoken language. An exception to that is just like a word. A token represents one concept. The token system was limited to one type of information, specifically real-world goods, different from speech that is not limited in this way. Again, different from spoken language, the token system made no use of grammar. This made their meaning separate from their placement order. Here's an example. If there were 5 cones and 5 ovoids arranged in any order, it would be interpreted as 5 baskets of grain, 5 jars of oil. Another interesting fact about the token system is that the same tokens were used in a large area in the Near East, and we would see a variety of different languages being spoken. This just shows that the tokens are not based on phonetics, not tied to units of a sound of a specific language. So, the goods they symbolize were understood in multiple languages. The token-based system showed the number of units of goods. The number of tokens always matched the number of units counted. Here's an example. 6 jars of oil always signified 6 ovoid-shaped tokens. Since the tokens are counted in the singular and can be placed in any order and still be counted the same, when you interpret all the tokens counted, let's say 6 ovoid-shaped tokens, you would interpret it as repeating jar of oil 6 times to express the message as plural. This is not like spoken language. The second advancement in the development of writing is pictography, when writing was used as a system for accounting. The token system eventually led to writing after 4 millennia. There was a transition from counting tokens to script. It happened at the same time in Sumer, the home of the Sumerians, and Elam, home of the Elamites. This took place in western Iran at around 3500 BC, when Elam at the time was under the Sumerian rule. The transition followed when the tokens most likely symbolizing a debt were being stored in envelopes until a payment was made. These envelopes were formed into the shape of clay balls that were hollow on the inside for storing the counting tokens. That way, they couldn't be misplaced. But there was a disadvantage in keeping the tokens inside the clay ball envelopes. The reason is that the clay envelopes would have to be broken open for the tokens to be counted. To get around this annoyance, they impressed the tokens on the outside of the clay envelope before putting the tokens inside. That way the tokens inside the envelope could always be verified when needed. Here's an example of a clay ball envelope from Susa, Iran at around 3300 BC. The impressed markings on the clay envelopes were the first signs of writing. The change from 3-dimensional artifacts to 2-dimensional markings did not change the meaning of the system. That is because the markings impressed on the outside of the clay represented the tokens that were inside. At around 3200 BC, this is in the Gemmed Nasser period of the Mesopotamian timeline. This is when the system of impressed signs was understood for some time. The clay tablets were now cushion-shaped, with impressions of tokens. The clay cushion-shaped tablets replaced the envelopes containing tokens. If we look at this picture of an impressed tablet from 3200 BC, we see the impression of a cone and a sphere token. They symbolize measures of grain. This resulted in 3 wedges and 2 circular markings that had the exact same meaning as the tokens they were representing. The markings are example of ideograms, signs that represent one concept. The impressed tablets still continued on to be used to record the number of goods they were given or received, and just like the envelopes of the past, they still express plurality in one-to-one correspondence. Around 100 years later, in 3100 BC, pictographs appeared. Pictographs are signs symbolizing tokens, but were drawn with a stylus instead of impressed. These pictographs were referring to merchandise instead of repeated in one-to-one correspondence to express plurality. Another development in writing was the use of numerals. Take this pictographic tablet, for example. This tablet shows an account of 33 units of oil. As you can see, there are not 33 marks on this tablet. The difference is, the tablet shows the pictographic sign for jar of oil, and then followed by 3 circles and 3 wedges. The numbers represented in the tablets were for 10 and 1. The thing is, numbers were not new at this time. Before, the impressions of cones and spheres represented measures of grain, but now they have gained another different meaning, a numerical meaning. The development of numbers created a variety of signs. Now a large number of goods can be written in just 7 markings, instead of 33 singular markings. To sum up what we have learned so far, it all started with the token system. Then the tokens went through a transition from 3-dimensional clay ball envelopes to 2-dimensional tablets, then from impressed markings to signs that were traced with a stylus, Tablets, just like the old token system, were used only for accounting. The same goes for a stylus that was made of a reed with a triangle-shaped end. The reed stylus gave way to the wedge-shaped look, known as early cuneiform. The thing is, even though the medium changed in each of the phases, the content of each phase stayed the same. The only major difference from the token system was the creation of two important signs: engraved pictographs and impressed numerals. The combination of these two new signs started the semantic division between the item counted and the number. The third phase is logography, the change from visual to oral. At around 3000 BC, we see the creation of phonetic signs, signs representing the sounds of speech. This can be seen as a big change in the evolution of Mesopotamian writing, as we see the medium part ways from the token ancestor to contend with spoken language. In order to do this, writing changed from the idea of accounting real goods to the realm of speech sounds. Basically, it was a move to a world of speech. With the formation of city-states, new regulations made it mandatory to have the names of individuals to be written on tablets who were to receive or give registered goods. The individual's name was recorded by the use of logograms, signs representing a word in a particular language. Logograms were just simply drawn pictures of words with the desired sound that was close to the individual. An example of a logogram is the name Neil. It can be written with a symbol showing a pair of bent knees. Since Sumerian was basically monosyllabic, meaning consisting of one syllable, when a name needed more than one phonetic unit, they were combined. This is what is known as the Rebus Principle. The Rebus Principle uses existing symbols like pictograms only for their sounds and not their meaning. Take the abstract noun life. How would that be represented? The Sumerians used the word for arrow, which was pronounced te, was also a sound for life, hence the arrow symbol was used for life. In order to avoid confusion when representing new words, they used a silent sign called a determinative, which told readers what kind of noun it was. Here's an example of a determinative. Dingir is a Sumerian word for God. The word is most commonly used as a determinative for religious names and related ideas. When it is used in this state, it is not pronounced, and it is transcribed as a superscript, D. A superscript, for those that don't know, it is a number, letter, or symbol that is slightly above or below the normal line of type. In this example, Inanna looks like an ordinary name, but once the determinative Dingir is added, it lets the reader know it is the goddess Inanna. The Rebus Principle greatly deepened the usefulness of the writing system. As you can see, phonetic signs made it possible to separate from accounting, which was writing's main use prior. Some of the first texts that don't deal with goods can be found in inscriptions on stone seals or metal vessels, placed in the tomb of the Royal Cemetery of from 2700 to 2600 BC. The inscriptions at the tomb did not have any numerals and were completely phonetic. The inscriptions contained personal names or a name and title, such as Puabi, Queen. It is possible that these funeral inscriptions were used to make a name of the deceased immortal by making the text official through Sumerian policy. Other funerary texts advanced the writing system. An example of this is statues portraying features of an individual held longer inscriptions. The name and title of the deceased follow patronymics, which is a name derived from the name of a father or ancestor, usually by the addition of a prefix or suffix. After the name and title of the deceased, the name of a temple or a god the statue was devoted to, and on rare occasions, there might be a plea for life after death, including a verb. These inscriptions presented syntax, the way in which words are put together to form phrases. This is yet another important advancement in bringing writing closer towards speech. After 2600 to 2500 BC, the Sumerian script developed into a complex system of ideograms combined with more use of phonetic signs. The use of syllabary, a system of phonetic signs conveying syllables, made writing even closer to spoken language. The writing system had a collection of around 400 signs. At this point, script could be fluent in any human activity possible. Examples of the oldest syllabic texts were royal inscriptions, magic, and religious literary texts. The Mesopotamian script was advanced by the creation of phonetic signs, which resulted in the departure of writing from accounting. But another important evolution of the script is when it spreads from Sumer to other regions. The very first Egyptian inscriptions are dated to the late 4th millennium BC, which can be found in rural tombs. The inscriptions consisted of ivory labels and ceremonial artifacts, such as maces and platelets, which bore personal names that were written phonetically as a rebus. The thing is, the Egyptians were using the Sumerians' writing system. That is why phonetic signs were so important for writing, as you could record names, making it a valuable tool for other cultures outside Mesopotamia. That is why the Egyptian script was made phonetic almost immediately. The Egyptians never took any Sumerian signs. The reason is that their collection of hieroglyphs symbolized objects accustomed to Egyptian culture, using their own sounds. In fact, the use of phonetic texts of personal names also played an important role in the Indus Valley. During a period of increased contact with Mesopotamia in 2500 BC, the Sumerian syllabic script was accepted by many Near Eastern countries, such as Semitic Akkadians and Alabites, the Indo-Europeans, such as the Mitanni, Hittites, and Persians, the Caucasians, the Hurrians and the Hurrians, and the Elamites and the Kazites. It is also possible that the Linear A and Linear B phonetic scripts of Crete and mainland Greece from 1400 to 1200 BC were influenced by the Near East. Lastly is the fourth phase, the invention of the alphabet, at around 1500 BC. The first known Proto-Sinaitic or Proto-Canaanite alphabet, which was invented in the region of present-day Lebanon. They knew there was a limit to how many sounds you could make in any form of language. That is why the early alphabet contained only 22 letters, with each letter standing for a single sound of a voice. The letter sound could be combined in a variety of ways, which allowed for an endless amount of possibilities for recording speech. This early form of the alphabet was completely different from the previous syllabaries. 1. The system is founded on acrophony, which means signs to represent the first letter of the word they stood for. Here's an example. An ox, alpu, was A, and a house, bitu, was B. Another difference is it was consonantal, meaning it only dealt with a certain few of sounds in the breath channel, such as B, D, L, M, and P, and etc. Lastly, the alphabet narrowed down the system to using 22 signs instead of hundreds of signs. The transition from cuneiform writing to the alphabet in the Near East lasted for hundreds of years. In the 7th century BC, the Syrian kings were still using two scribes. The first scribe wrote in Akkadian and cuneiform on a clay tablet, and the second wrote Aramaic in a cursive alphabetic script, which was traced on a papyrus scroll. The Phoenician merchants established themselves on the coast of present-day Syria and Lebanon, and as a result helped circulate the alphabet. Especially, they brought their consonantal alphabetic system to Greece, possibly as early as 800 BC. The Greeks made further improvements to the semantic alphabet by adding in letters for vowels like A, E, I, O, U. This led to the creation of the 27-letter Greek alphabet, improving the writing system in every way, as all the sounds were clearly specified. Words of consonants like bed, bad, bid, and bud could all be easily separated from one another. After this point, the alphabet no longer went through any major changes. The alphabet was only created once. Many of the alphabets of today, from Latin, Arabic, Hebrew, and much more, came from Proto-Sinaitic. In fact, the Latin alphabet was a direct descendant of the Etruscan alphabet. The Etruscans, which were established in the province of Tuscany, Italy, implemented the Greek alphabet with a slight change to the shape of the letters. Then the Etruscan alphabet was adopted by the Romans. When the Romans conquered Etruria in the 1st century BC, the alphabet made it to the Roman armies, and any nation that was under the Roman Empire became literate in the 1st centuries AD. This goes for the Gauls, Angles, Saxons, Germans, and Franks that lived in modern-day France, England, and Germany. In 800 AD, Charlemagne had a major influence on the development of the Latin script by creating standards to follow, such as creating a small cursive script, where modern lowercase writing comes from. The invention of the printing press in 1450 drastically changed the distribution of texts and presented a new standard in lettering and layout. Finally, we enter our era, the computer age, when the internet pushes the alphabet into cyberspace, a new way to preserve information. To sum up the evolution of writing, in the first stage, we get the token system, which gave way to interpreting merchandise through the use of abstract tokens. Second, the counters abstracted the items counted from their context. That way objects and animals could be accounted independently from where they were in real life. Third, the token system disconnected the information from the knower, meaning a group of tokens could communicate precise information from another individual familiar with the system. This was an important change, as the norm was communicating through word of mouth. When the tokens were impressed onto the envelopes to represent the tokens held inside, it created problems, as the tokens could no longer be handled without cracking them open. That is why the transition from three-dimensional counters into two-dimensional signs occurred. This established the second step in abstraction. By getting rid of the tokens, the clay tablets represented the third level of abstraction, as the impressed marking stopped simulating a set of actual counters. The creation of numerals was the fourth step of abstraction. That was critical, as it allowed plurality to be used in fully abstract terms. As a result, we get the phonetic units, which mark the fifth step of abstraction, as signs no longer referred to objects pictured and dealt with the word they suggested. Phonetics allowed the writing system to transition from a representational to a conceptual language system. It left the world of referring to real-life objects to enter the realm of words and ideas they stand for. Lastly, starting from ideograms expressing concepts and phonetic signs referring to the sound of monosyllabic words led to the idea of letters. Eventually, with a few tweaks, it led to the modern-day alphabet. The Mesopotamian script made massive advancements over the 10,000-year period. The last clay tablet was written in the Near East at around 300 AD. At this point, the cuneiform script had been used for 3 millennia and replaced the token system that came before it for over 5,000 years. Cuneiform script was then succeeded by the alphabet, which we have used for 3,500 years. What do you guys think about the evolution of writing? Let me know in the comment section below. If you like the content, make sure to leave a like, and if you could, share the video. It is greatly appreciated. If you haven't already, subscribe for more historical content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.